Welcome to another episode of Get Started Investing, a podcast where we answer all of your money and investing questions. If you've just joined us for the first time, we do recommend scrolling up and starting at episode 1 for 12 episodes to get you confident and invested in the stock market. Otherwise, let's crack straight into it today. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. We are talking all things superannuation.
Yes. We're bringing in an expert from Australian Retirement Trust. Her name is Anne Fuchs. She's the Executive General Manager of Advice, Guidance and Education.
Exactly what we need.
Advice,
guidance and education.
The reason being is they've just launched a campaign all about the fact that we as Australians are sitting on a monster, and that monster is our superannuation. And the stats are alarming.
Yeah.
Far too few of us are engaging with our superannuation. The point is we can do something significant now that is going to benefit our lives significantly in the future.
Don't worry, their marketing campaign is far more pithy than what Bryce just outlined. But some of the stats that are around Australians and their super are pretty concerning. So nearly a quarter of Australians haven't checked their super account in the last 12 months. Only 37% know how to manage their super investment options, and 67% don't feel their super is in a good position for their age. So, you put those together and it's Australians aren't checking or don't feel like they're in a good spot and don't know how to manage it to get themselves back into a good spot. And I think that is why we're so passionate about Australians checking their super and engaging with their super. And it's why Australian Retirement Trust are trying to get people to engage more and realise that super can be a monster.
Absolutely.
And a friendly monster.
Yes.
Like
BFG.
a Monsters Inc. monster.
That's right. Well, today we're going to chat to Anne about some of the basics that we can do to make sure that we grow this monster as best we can over the next 20 to 30 years. So no matter where you are in life at the moment, there's something in this episode that can, I guess that will help you do the best you can when it comes to superannuation.
Yeah, and I think importantly, we're going to ask Anne, for those 67% of Australians who feel like they're not on track, what are the things that they can put in place to get back on track?
Yeah. So for more information, you can head to the Australian Retirement Trust website, australianretirementtrust.com.au. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Well, Anne, welcome to Get Started Investing.
I think I've made it.
Yes.
To quote Muriel's wedding, I've made it. You've made it, Muriel.
They do say that this is the pinnacle of finance careers.
I'm really feeling it here in Darlinghurst. I'm feeling like a bit of a hero. I'm going to brag once I get back to work.
So we mentioned before we started recording that we quite like your new tagline. You're sitting on a monster, and we want Australians to wake up to their super and think about it more. And so hopefully, people realise that they're sitting on this monster and start thinking about it. Just how much of a monster is the average Australian sitting on?
It depends. If you're 40, a 40-year-old sitting on a monster of $90,000. Now, can you imagine if you had $90,000 just sitting in your cash account?
Yeah.
Like 25% of us haven't logged in the last year, and that's a bit of a monster problem that we want to talk about as well.
Yeah.
So on that, what does research show about how we are engaging with our super at the moment?
Well, I'd say, as I said, 25% of us aren't engaging at all. So there's a bit of a come on, wake up Australia moment here. Like if you had that amount of money sitting in a portfolio of shares, which is what your super is, or in your bank account, you would log in. Now, like if you are a 40-year-old and you've got 90,000, if you want to be really comfy and not kind of drinking goon and flying a low-budget airline in retirement for a holiday, you might want $160,000. So we're kind of saying, hey, now's the time, it's not too late. Just kind of log in and check what your balance is to start, and then we can start taking some steps to sort it out, to bridge that gap.
Yeah. It is just fascinating 11% of our pay, soon to be 12.5% of our pay getting taken out, and people aren't thinking about it. So hopefully people listen to this episode, they start thinking about it. You mentioned there, log in and check your balance is one thing to do. That's a good starting point.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things people should be doing?
Well, yeah, so you got to look at your phone. If you don't have a super fund app on your phone, have a moment of shame to yourself and go, oh my God, lost opportunity, but don't. It's regret. It's a wasted emotion. So yeah, download the app, check your balance, and then seeing you've got a whole bunch of passionate listeners, find out what you're invested in, because you could be invested in some really sexy assets, some shares that, you know, your listeners would be hearing about all the time on your show. You could be investing in private companies, airports, you name it. Like, it's actually really exciting. Super is like global investing on a level that is a monster in a powerful, good way for you when you finish work.
So let's talk about the things that we can do to grow this monster, because there are a number of, I guess, key pillars that help us get to that lifestyle of not drinking goon and
Drinking and yeah,
and flying cheap
I
cheap
aspire to
airlines.
greater in my life at retirement personally. I drank goon at uni. Yeah.
So we've already spoken about checking your superannuation. 25% of Aussies don't check it or haven't checked in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So start with that.
Start
Simple.
with that. And 70% of us are worried we don't have enough. So, okay, if that's the case, then what's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. So stop
Expecting a
it.
different
Yes, so
result.
stop it. And think about what could you do differently. So there's some really simple steps. Firstly, by understanding what you're invested in. And if you're a younger person, you might be able to take on a lot more risk. I've listened to your episode around ETFs and just, you know, the risk that's within an ETF. There are index options in superannuation. So you could look at a particular investment option. You could look at insurance, because insurance is, of course, really important, but it can erode your balance. You could have too much, not enough, Goldilocks, you know, you get the deal. So there's that. And then a coffee a day, if you're 40, and I'm a bit older than 40, sadly, poor me, a coffee a day, it works out to $60,000 at retirement. So if you're just not doing a coffee a day and you were just doing it at home and you put that money into super, that is like how many business class flights to New York?
2.
A lot. Hello.
How many bottles of wine?
So, because when people retire, they probably have like 10 to 15 years of where they actually get to be really active and enjoy. And we want Australians to really live a big, happy retirement, because you work for, am I allowed to say bloody? A bloody long time? Like, you're paying off houses and you're slogging, and we're all working harder and harder, or it certainly feels like it after COVID. So you should be seeing this as an opportunity to splurge on yourself, so that when you move towards the decrepit years, you then still that money lasts, so that you're not you've got really nice care and you're looked after, because we're all people like being born now are going to live to 100. So we're going to need this money when we stop working.
Yeah, well, we've spoken about on the show the important, and this is why focusing on it now is super important, because whilst it's hard to conceptualize for Ren and I 40 years of superannuation ticking away in the background and what that's going to grow into, what's not hard to sort of conceptualize so much is the life that we both want to be able to live when we get to that point, and having the choice and the freedom and the availability to live the life that we want, which is how we get to the point of really focusing now and optimizing our super setup.
Most people have retirement like pushed on them, because they either get a bad back, they get made redundant, and then they go, oh, bugger it, I've not done enough. And then they've got a bit of a monster problem, which keeps them awake at night. So which is why we're doing this Come On Australia. It's almost, my obsession is like slip, slop, slap. So you can tell I've got this Irish kind of complexion that keeps one particular beauty shop, well, I'm one of their platinum customers, and may have pink sort of logo. But back in the 80s, that government was like, come on, Australia, it's too late to worry about your skin at 60, because it's too damage is done. And so that is how, for young people listening, there's no point worrying about super when you're 50, because you've lost, have you guys spoken about compounding interest?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've lost like 40 years of compounding interest,
Yeah.
50 years of compounding interest. It's like 50 years of not putting on sunscreen, and then
Yeah.
the damage is done.
Yeah.
So if you want to be beautiful and look beautiful and have this monster balance that you can live off to have these monster adventures in retirement, then you need to start doing these simple steps now.
I love that analogy. I've never thought of it in that way before, but it is very similar to the slip, slop,
Totally,
slap.
yeah. I was talking about, like, in the 80s, the baby boomers were out in there, and I'm from Queensland, macrame bikinis, putting on the reef oil, and then there was a tsunami of people with skin cancer, and it's like, well, we can just triage, and we want the next generation who have started their working life with super to recognise they're investors.
Yeah.
They're buying shares every time their employer is putting money in. They're an investor and they're buying property or infrastructure, or they're buying some of the ASX, and that's going to be a monster opportunity for them.
Yeah, we were chatting about that recently and saying, like, when you think of it, when you're making that choice between what super fund you want to sign up with, and like it's 11% of your pay, and you wouldn't just let your boss take 11% of your pay and invest it without telling you how they're investing it. When you think of it like that, or, like, you wouldn't, if you were living at home, you wouldn't just let your parents take 11% of your money and invest it on your behalf without telling you how you're doing it. It's like being active and making the choice and knowing where your money's going and how it is being invested is so important, because it's so much of your pay.
Yeah, it's really, the psychology behind it is weird, actually, as to why people aren't paying attention. I think that, which again, if we can make super sexy, which sounds like kind of weird, but I think if we can actually pull back the covers, so to speak, and just start showing all of the different shares that are in there. I mean, performance is everything, right? Look, I'll just do a little flex and say we're like number one over 10 years for growth.
Nice.
And so if a young person invested with us, you've got, that's pretty cool. But again, if you're a passionate index investor, you can create some portfolios with single sector options. Super used to be really boring. It was a statement that would come on a piece of paper. You probably maybe didn't open it up. Where now they're coming in and as emails, it's on an app. You can get all of that transparency around what you're invested in. So there's hopefully, as funds, we're doing better in actually making it easier for people to understand what they're invested in, because it's really democratising share ownership for the good of Australia.
Yeah. I do love how much more flexibility super funds are giving now.
Yeah.
Like back, even just when we started our working lives, it was balanced, conservative or growth, and you had no idea where that money was actually going. And now it's, more flexible. You were talking about some of the control that you have and just like the transparency on where it's going.
Super had this weird vibe. So I started back in the late 90s at an investment bank at Chifley Square, and superannuation was like something that people wore cardigans. It just was not a place where you didn't at all seem sexy. And I think about how it is, and it certainly didn't seem like an investment house. Where now super's actually like, we're an investor, and we're investing people's money, and people are, and we are seeing it more and more and more. People are paying attention. I wonder really whether the one good thing that came from early release from COVID, which was a monster problem, people pulling money out, like, a lot of our members were pulling money out to pay the rent, and they had to. But that's works out to about $120,000 less at retirement, which is a monster problem.
When it comes to choosing the right option, and Ren's mentioned their buzzwords around growth and conservative and whatnot, what sort of investment choices can you actually make inside super? You've mentioned shares there a number of times, but like if we look under the hood of our superannuation funds as well, there is more to it. So what are some of the investment choices you can make?
So you can choose to basically say to the super fund, can you look after this for me? You guys, hopefully you know what you're doing. And then there'll be, it's called My Super, and there'll be, depending on your age, basically the assets that you're invested in they de-risk. So as you get older, there'll be a higher and higher weighting towards fixed interest and cash, the closer you get to retirement, because you don't want to be 3 years out from retirement and then the share market crashes by 40%. That would be bad.
Yes.
That's hard to make up that time. So that's fundamentally, the younger you are, the more you'll have exposed to shares. But a lot of people are interested in the single sector index options or things like specialised portfolios like diversified alternatives, which are those different types of assets like private debt, equity, hedge funds, and it's like a core versus satellite where you'll have an index option as the core following the stock market. And then, for those people who are a bit more playful investing, they'll have some satellite options around there. But look, I just think if you're not a passionate investor and you don't trust yourself, then I'd also encourage you to get some financial advice. Of course, I'd say that, but or to trust your super fund to do it.
Yeah.
Now, another good thing that super funds are doing is that a lot of the time you can call and actually get advice on your super.
Indeed. So most funds, you pay your membership fee, you can call up and just get simple advice about, hey, what am I invested in? And they can undertake a risk profile analysis because everyone, you probably know, everyone's risk profile is really different based on a whole raft of factors. So you can get all that simple advice about what you should be invested in, what, in terms of contributions, whether that should be within your pay or outside of your pay, how much insurance you should have.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Should it be inside or outside? Speaking for me, my insurance is outside of super because, it's more cost effective and I want to have my dodgy thyroid underwritten by my insurer and because I'm the main breadwinner in my family. So I think that's how super funds can help you with that really simple stuff. But, we really love the financial advisors, and financial advisors can really help with more complex type of scenarios about, should I have an SMSF? Should I wind down an SMSF? I've got managed funds. How do I bring it all together? So, yeah.
Yeah. So Bryce and I, we did our AFSL training and a couple of years ago, and
fancy.
a lot of the topics were like pretty straightforward, like investing in shares and basic deposit products, and then you get to super. And like the concept of super is pretty straightforward, but the intricacies and the laws around it, that's where it gets quite technical. And it's like, this is where advice makes a difference.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's a lot of jargon. So this is why I applaud you guys for what you're doing. There's a lot of jargon in the sector. People don't even, I swear the shutters come down a bit when you even say the word super. So if you just said you've got a $90,000 investment
True.
that you can't touch till you're 60, then maybe people might say, so we need to start shifting our language a bit. But if any of your listeners have aunties, uncles that are kind of older, they should tell them. And if they're tired, they're on their feet all day, and they want to wind down, there's things like transition to retirement. There's all these cool little strategies you can do in super to start spending that money, because that is the point of it.
Yeah.
Now, a really common question we get here at Equity Mates is, how much super should I have? And obviously it's not one size fits all, and it depends on who you are and what you want to do in retirement. But I think the really difficult thing is you don't really know who you're going to be at 60 or 65 when you're 20 or 30.
No, you definitely don't.
So how do you start even approaching that question or answering like, am I on track?
You don't know who you are going to be as a human, but you know what situation you don't want to be in. So like it's funny, I used to live in just up the road here when I was in my 20s, and I thought I might have been living somewhere else or, a different type of life. But the one thing I knew is that I never wanted to worry about money. Back in my day, we used to spend so much money. We used to go to those restaurants that had that MasterCard, like, like it was that, so, and we were like,
I think a lot of younger listeners
They basically had to put it through a...
It took an imprint of
a piece of paper.
like
it was
carbon
pre-swipe.
And you'd have to do it because you're panicking that you weren't over the limit. Like, so you know, as a young person, that when you retire, you don't want to be going, when the bill comes, oh shit, have I got enough money in my card to be able to pay for my kids and the grandkids to go out for dinner? You don't want that. So $560,000 is the magic number.
Okay, that's what we should be aiming for.
So for a single or a couple?
For a single, it's 560, and for a couple, it's 720,000 or thereabouts. So that's when you know that you can go to restaurants, go on a holiday, downsize, replace your car, all those kind of things. Like, people are pretty, there's a point where money doesn't make you happy anymore. But there is a point where money actually stresses you out and makes you know, ill with worry. And that's kind of the number. And as I said, like if you're a 40-year-old, most people have about 90. They probably should have about 160. So there's a gap.
Yeah.
And we're just calling out, don't let that monster gap be your problem. You should take some action today.
Yeah. If people want to see if they're on track for that 560 or 720 number, the Money Smart superannuation calculator is a good resource.
It is. It's an excellent resource.
Yeah, you can put what your age is, how much you get paid, and what your super balance is, and it'll do the calculation.
Yeah, you can modify.
Yeah,
it
does. Yeah.
And look, your super fund will also generally have those calculators there as well. But ASIC do have excellent resources.
Yeah. So if you're trying to answer, am I on track? That's one way to do it. And I think the good thing is, you know, we were talking about all the jargon and stuff before. If you do the calculation and you're not on track, there are levers you can pull. You know, you can salary sacrifice, you can do concessional contributions, you can do after-tax contributions. Like there are ways that you can beef it up.
Look, maybe I'm biased, but I don't get in a way why a lot of people will go and build these portfolios and just buy shares outside of super, or buy managed funds, which ultimately are going to be subject to a much higher tax rate. And I sort of go, well, so you're putting money aside, investing in shares and whatever, and you're trading, and maybe it's just the thrill of trading and it's the price you pay for it. But I would say that, you know, super's taxed really concessionally, and there's a lot to be said for that, and particularly with the stage 3 tax cuts upon us.
Yes.
If you're in a position where you're not sort of really where things are super tight, you might be able to get some of that stage 3 tax cut and maybe whack a little bit in. Is it $100 a month you could put in? It all compounding interest, it'll add up.
Yeah. No, it's a valid point. I think the counter argument that we often talk about on the show to that, because we have audience who are in
love
both.
Trading. I know I'm a heresy.
No, it's not so much love.
It's
not so much love trading. It's more like the point at which we can access that money. And so,
and this is true.
If Ren and I want to be retiring or having freedom and choice at 45. When super's off limits.
Well, if you must be, so you'll have to be, you're building up quite a portfolio, sir.
Yeah, that's, hey, I'll show you.
Like, check it. Yeah, I know
you get the point.
I don't, it's not about retiring at 45. Yeah. That would be nice. But it's about like having choice at every stage in your life.
Yeah. But fundamentally, the principles remain the same. You don't have a bigger free kick in finance than superannuation.
No, and you're right. And so people do these career choices, and not feeling trapped, I think, is really key. And so, and that's again one thing why I love the fact that super is preserved, because we are instant gratification junkies as humans, and if it's in front of us, we'll largely go, and then we'll in 10 minutes later we'll go, I'm poor me, like what I've forgotten about it, which is why. It being there at the end. We can do some other stuff earlier, but we've got that money there, and it's a wonderful insurance policy to having a good life at the end of your end of work.
The New York Times just did a big write-up on the 401k system over in the US, which is, I guess, their equivalent, but it's voluntary.
Yes.
And they were just talking about how it's just led to this massive retirement gap. Yeah. And a lot of the commentary in there, including from some of the biggest institutional money managers in the world, was Australia is the model that they should follow.
We are. So I'm actually heading over to London next week, and Australia there's a series over there about really retirement and advice, and superannuation is a bit of a collective experience, but in retirement is a very individual experience. Your health, your partner, what do you own? But Australia is the envy of the world, and that's why again So come on, listeners. The rest of the world is just so jealous of this amazing thing that we have, where your employer puts some money into investments on your behalf that you get to live off. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good point to wrap, and just a massive reminder for everyone listening. to check your super.
Slip,
Don't be
slop,
part
slap
of
your super.
slip.
So
Yeah.
you don't have a monster problem, listeners.
We were saying at the start of this episode that we really like the motif of the monster and the tagline, but
Yes.
maybe you need a
Oh,
nice
no, marketing
slogan.
will kill me. Yeah, they'll kill me. No, they'll kill me. It's awaken your super. Sorry. So, yeah.
And I think, importantly, if you're listening and you're engaging with your finances, send this to someone who isn't engaging with their finances, because we're all investors, we all have super, and we all want a comfortable retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Anne, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been fun.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.